From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 3 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Issue 1, Obama goes wild.
I'm very proud that my Department of Interior has put forward a comprehensive plan to make sure that we're protecting the refuge and that we're designating new areas, including coastal plains, for preservation. And I'm going to be calling on Congress to make sure that they take it one step further, designating it as a wilderness so that we can make sure that this amazing wonder is preserved for future generations.
President Obama is pushing Congress to restrict vast areas of the National Wildlife Refuge, also known as ANWR, including offshore areas from future energy development. By declaring these lands wilderness, permanent development of any kind, including roads, would be prohibited. Environmental activists have reacted with elation. From their perspective, Alaska's wildlife refuge is a national treasure that must be preserved at all costs. But Alaska lawmakers are furious. They believe the federal government is impeding American energy independence. Here's 14-year senior senator from Alaska, Republican Lisa Murkowski, echoing the position of Ronald Reagan in 1987, recommending oil development in the refuge and denouncing the Barack Obama designation of Alaska as a wilderness.
We feel that this is a frontal attack on the state of Alaska and our ability to develop resources for the good of Alaskans and for the good of the country. This is not just about Alaska. Our oil comes to you guys down here.
If you think Senator Murkowski sounded angry, listen to how 40-plus years in Congress, Alaska Representative Don Young describes the president.
He lectures the legislative body. You're not important. I'm the king. Disgusting for the nation, disgusting for the people. This man, this person, has gone completely wacko. This is an attack upon the state, attack upon previous laws, attack upon the nation.
Newly elected Senator Dan Sullivan thinks the environmental lobby is living in another era.
We have ways in which, whether it's ice roads, ice pads for drilling, only in the winter, where we do these things, shoot 3D seismic, that literally has zero impact on the tundra, literally. And we need to make sure that that element of the debate people are more aware of.
In 1980, Congress specifically set aside portions of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge for future oil and gas exploration, including acreage that President Obama has now unilaterally designated as a wilderness area. Question: why has President Obama broken the 1980 ANWR compromise? Pat Buchanan.
John, Barack Obama is liberated. He sees himself liberated by the defeat in last November. He's going to go basically with his ideology. He's going to go with his political base, the Luddite liberals and the environmentalists and all the rest of it. And I do think this is a very negative decision. None of us wants to see anything spoiled, but you can drill in the ANWR and also preserve the ANWR, John. And in my judgment, I think that this is going to last for about 2 years, but that area is going to be opened up. But look what he's done. Prudhoe Bay is drying up. You've got that enormous pipeline there coming down from the ANWR to Valdez with all that oil we could use. I really think it is a very small-minded, narrow-minded decision on the president's part.
Hello.
Oil is $44 a barrel. We don't need any more oil. President Carter set aside that land, that water in Alaska in 1980, and a Democratic Congress validated it. President Obama is just trying to add another layer of security. There aren't that many places left on the planet anymore that are as they originally were intended to be. And the president also this last week opened up the Atlantic coastal areas off of Virginia and Florida for drilling in the future, which would be 50 miles off the coast, and you have all the senators there saying that that's a good idea. Nobody's going to be doing any drilling there either, because again, we don't need more oil. We have found other alternative, cleaner ways of energy, and it is not just an environmental movement. It's, I think most Americans would like to see parts of our country preserved for future generations.
Tom Rogan, how did Alaska get into the Union?
Alaska joined the Union in
58.
58.
Yep, 1867
the orig-
now.
1867.
William Seward, the
orig-
greatest Secretary of State
Who's
to ever
answering the
live.
question? You or Tom?
The original purchase for what, $7 million from Russia?
I think it was 15 million.
How much was it?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I've somewhat
they-
redeemed
they-
myself. The original history, the main point though, as it goes to this, was the fact of the Alaska purchase and the entry into the Union has been an economic boom for the nation. It's also a vast area for people to, opportunities in terms of tourism. But I think the issue that we have here is that the reason Alaskans, including native, I don't know the exact, politically correct term, but people in Alaska who are native to Alaska support this kind of activity is that it provides a lot of job opportunities and wealth. And look, oil prices eventually are probably going to go up, so it will become economically profitable because of technology changes. The actual costs, the capital costs, the costs of maintenance are lower than they once were. And so there are opportunities through that. And I think that should be up to, as much as we can, if we can balance the environmental side, which we increasingly can, and we can get an economic benefit, if it is in the longer term, then that's something we should do.
Have you heard of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline?
Yeah.
I visited it. I was out in the snow, in fact. I had the pilot land the plane. And I walked along it, and as far as the eye could see, either from above or on the ground, going right up, in fact, to where that station is, right on the water up there, where they're taking the oil out. You don't even see any oil anywhere. Meaning that it's an immaculate environment.
There was
Remember
a
the
huge
Exxon
spill.
From
Valdez?
the environmental point of view, it's immaculate.
It was a huge
Right.
spill in Valdez. What are
Exactly.
you talking about? One of the worst we ever had.
I know,
Exxon
aside from Valdez.
Aside.
And Valdez is not in that area.
But the
Valdez
question
is
is
way
further
down.
south.
But see, here's the thing: the technology now enables you to be more effective and more environmental. And there are the risks of it, of course, but it's a calculation of risk. And one of the big gripes I have with the president's point of view is that, although I respect his opinion on the environmental side, he's not honest in the sense that the regulatory framework behind the scenes, in terms of permitting, in terms of EPA surprise regulations at the last moment, mean that it's very difficult for companies that have to have a long-term plan, because it takes a number of years to make the decision to invest a lot of money. So they either, there's a lot of waste there. There should be more clarity. If he's going to say it, it's like, these are the regulations, they're not changing.
We're
Can we-
practically
wait a minute.
oil independent in this country right now. The
Well,
president
but
must
that's
have been
not
doing
thanks to
something okay
regulation.
for the last
From the
6
Bush
years.
administration before,
Oh,
was
come
the,
on.
the permitting takes a
What
long
do you
time.
think, Mort?
I'm really a little bit astounded by this decision, because this is something that is really critical to the national security of the United States, to this economy. Yes, right now, oil, there's a lot of surplus of oil, but for large parts of our past and for large parts of our future, we are going to need this kind of energy. And so I absolutely do not understand and cannot understand his decision on this thing.
Well, oil is eventually runs out. If we want this planet to continue beyond our lifetimes, we have to find alternative fuels. We are doing very well on that
But they
front.
are much more
It is
expensive
fine to keep
energy bills.
that oil in the ground for the future. We
Let's see
don't
what
need it now.
California
It is
energy
a
bills.
political fight about money that Alaskan
John, what we ought to
politicians
do-
want to return to their constituents.
What we ought to do is punch all the holes into the ground. They take a very tiny area, find out how much oil is there, and if you don't immediately need it, don't start pumping it, but let's find out exactly how much is there, and then at a time, Tom makes a good point. We have all these regulations. It's on land. We have very few problems
And
drilling on
renewable
land.
energy is
Why don't
much
we
more
punch
expensive for
those
energy
little
bills.
holes
Absolutely.
off of the Virginia and Florida coast
I
where
don't
all the
think we
politicians
should.
are supporting it?
I don't-
50 miles
I don't
out.
think we should, because
that
those.
you're opposed to.
Well, look, you got millions of people living there. Have you ever
But
been
the
up to the North
Massachusetts-
Slope? I mean, you got a couple of caribou hanging out there, and that's
How
about
many
it.
U.S.
Oh,
troops
so
are
the
in
few
Alaska?
Alaskans are
You hear that question,
expendable
Alan?
and the others
What's
aren't?
about
How many U.S. troops are up
I
there?
don't know exactly. Elmendorf's a big air base that we go in and
15,000?
out of whenever the
20,000. Good guess.
I redeem myself
When did we get
somewhat.
Alaska?
We got Alaska in 1867 by Seward, and in 1958.
What do you mean Seward? Who's Seward?
William Seward, the greatest Secretary of State that ever lived.
Yeah.
He got his throat damaged in that when they assassinated Lincoln.
Mm-hmm. Well, where do you stand, finally?
Listen, listen, this is an enormously important decision in a sense, not just for Alaska, but frankly for the United States. There's a huge amount, we don't know this for sure, therefore I agree with what Pat's saying, let's test it. But there's in all likelihood a huge amount of energy there that we could use that would make us a lot less dependent upon the Middle East and God knows what else.
We're virtually independent now.
I think the 7 million figure might be right. 15 million was for Louisiana purchased by Jefferson.
Well, two very good purchases.
The environmentalists won this one,
but here's the
and
thing.
let's hope they win a lot more on a planet that is facing a lot of stresses and strains.
20,000.
Yeah.
I think ocean protection is a much more big environmental concern with toxicology in the ocean and the food chain. One final thing I would say is that the price.
It's not either or.
Well, but it can be.
No,
but the
it's not either
the
or.
pricing for renewable energy. Let us see what California people are paying in energy costs because of the renewable regulations, and it will be a lot more.
Alaska's gotten more yield out of this program than anyone ever anticipated.
Right? Exactly.
Issue 2, Barack's new buddy.
President Obama has a big fan, Narendra Modi, the leader of the world's most populous democracy. 1,250,000,000 people, and potentially the world's next superpower, India. Visiting the vast nation earlier this week, President Obama was met by Indian Prime Minister Modi with an airport hug, a sure sign of presidential rapport. President Obama was also honored by an invitation to participate in India's Republic Day Parade, the first U.S. president to do so. After viewing India's military hardware, the two leaders agreed to a landmark deal that will expand defense trade and allow U.S. companies to help India develop its civilian nuclear power. Within 10 years, Mr. Obama also hopes to increase U.S.-India trade to $500 billion annually.
Question, how long have these agreements been under negotiation, Eleanor Clift?
Well, it was during the George W. Bush administration that this country basically gave our endorsement to the development of nuclear weapons in India. And so the terms of that and our terms of how American nuclear industry would deal with that have been in various terms of negotiation for years. Truth is, the U.S. nuclear industry died in 1979 with 3 Mile Island, and it's really just kind of come to life, spurred on by President Obama in the last 3 years as an alternative to greenhouse gases and an attempt to help the climate. And so this is a big breakthrough, and I think the U.S. industry, not only the nuclear industry, sees India as a huge commercial opportunity for American business. And the personal rapport that Modi and Obama clearly have will come in handy because India is a nuclear power in a very volatile area. So this is a good relationship that's been developed.
The budding relationship with India is not the big story of the week, though, John. What is the deteriorating relationship of the United States and its partner Israel over a number of issues, including this Boehner invitation to Bibi Netanyahu to come to the Congress of the United States, where Obama spoke and trash America's policy on Iran. It has split this city and it has created a real firestorm. There are good news coming out of India and the U.S., but I think the U.S.-Israeli relationship is at as hard a point as it's been since 1956 when Ike ordered the Israeli army out of Sinai.
Are you faulting those who extended the invitation?
I am. I would fault both the Israelis and I would fault Mr. Boehner as well. You do not, a foreign leader, you do not bring him into the chamber of the Congress and Senate to trash the foreign policy of the United States of America.
Who joined Boehner?
Well, Boehner's been joined by the Republicans. It's bad for Israel in a second sense in that Boehner and the Republicans are all for it, but many of the Democrats who are very strongly pro-Israel are saying, why are you bringing him here to attack the president's policy?
Who was the Democrat who joined Boehner?
Menendez?
Well, Menendez is the Senate, but Menendez himself is not going to vote for the sanctions bill on Iran.
Yeah, but it's a rear guard effort to torpedo any deal with Iran.
Sure.
Well, I tell you what,
and Netanyahu is being pretty blatant about it, and the visit comes 2 weeks before he faces re-election in his own country. So he's getting a lot of blowback from the Israeli media. for trying to bring America into the decision-making in Israel.
There's a lot of apprehension now about the deal which this government, the Obama administration, is doing with Iran in terms of getting some kind of handle on their nuclear weapons capabilities and development. And there are a lot of people who are very worried that Iran is going to be put in a much stronger position because this administration is not really willing to face up to Iran. This is just another dimension of it, because Netanyahu and the Israelis are obviously terrified because of what Iran might do. And this is going to be, this was his rationale for coming here, to find some way to explain it to the American people.
I have to say, I think it was an error that that Boehner invited the Prime Minister so close to the Israeli election. I think at any time that's fine, but if you imagine the British Prime Minister coming, I think there's a problem there in terms of diplomatic protocol, which is important. But I would say, actually, it is quite interesting looking at how Mossad and the intelligence services are talking about this nuclear deal. I think they have either very good, I don't have information, I just, my inclination, they have very good human or signal intelligence. And
one other question, did the AJC approve this?
I don't know what the AJC did.
Okay, next stop, Arabia.
Following his India visit, Mr. Obama jetted off to Saudi Arabia to pay his respects to the recently deceased former Saudi Arabian king, Abdullah. But meeting with Saudi Arabia's new king, Salman, Mr. Obama was less relaxed than in India. Here's one reason why.
This strategy of taking out terrorists who threaten us while supporting partners on the front lines is one that we have successfully pursued in Yemen and Somalia for years.
That was President Obama 5 months ago, announcing a military campaign against ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. In that speech, Mr. Obama used Yemen as an example of successful U.S. policy. Yemen borders western Oman and southwest Saudi Arabia. It has a population of 26 million and a per capita GDP of approximately $2,500. But in the last 2 weeks, the Yemeni government, an ally of the U.S., headed by President Mansour Hadi, was overthrown by Houthi Shia rebels, supported by Iran, who now control the levers of power. American counterterrorism officials fear the highly capable ACAP, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, will gain an advantage from the chaos. And to U.S. allies in the Middle East, notably Saudi Arabia, Yemen's crisis signifies weak leadership and disarray on the part of the Obama administration.
Question, is the chaos in Yemen an indictment of President Obama's foreign policy? Tom Rogan.
I think it is, and I think it is for a couple of reasons. Number one, the president referred to it, as we mentioned last week, as a testament of his counterterrorism success. I think sometimes a lot of the time, he tries to pretend that it's either invasion or his policy that are the only options, and that's not true. The situation you face in Yemen now is one in which Iran-supported rebels, the Houthi rebels, control the levers of power, are exerting pressure on the United States, and Saudi Arabia, this is the key point, feels surrounded by Iran from Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. And what that does is it introduces a calculation of paranoia in Saudi calculations, and the problem is that risks them funding Salafi extremists like ISIS and Al-Qaeda to counterpose Iran.
Yemen has never been an island of stability. There was an ineffective, corruptive government which happened to be allied with the U.S. because they don't like Al-Qaeda, and so we were partnering with them and waging these drone strikes. The Houthis, who have now overthrown that government, hate Al-Qaeda worse than that government did, because it's the whole Sunni-Shia divide. So we'll continue probably to deal with them, and they'll deal with Iran. And there are confluence of interests where occasionally Iran and the U.S. are fighting the same enemy. It's happening in Syria too.
Hold on, Pat.
It's not Obama's fault. Okay?
Exactly.
He didn't do this. The Houthi rebels have been battling in their own country in the north, and they're battling Al-Qaeda, our enemy. They don't like Israel. They don't like the Americans. But we are already dealing with the Houthi rebels who have captured the capital there. Look, whether it's Syria or Iraq, there are people who are allies of ours de facto whom we don't like because we dislike the other side, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, even more.
But what are the Saudis going to do?
What are the
Saudis are in
Saudis
trouble.
The president visited Saudi Arabia, by the way.
Yeah, but the Saudis are, as Tom mentioned, in deep trouble. You got to the north, you got the ISIS in Iraq. You got the Houthi rebels who don't like them in the south. You've northeast Saudi Arabia, it's all Shia. You've got the Shia are dominant in Bahrain. They got a
and they've got a declining commodity because their oil isn't as valued as
Quickly, make your point.
Well, let's let Mort get in.
Mort?
No, listen, I think we are looking at a disintegration of that part of the world, including a lot of our key allies. Saudi Arabia, like it or not, is a key ally for the United States, and we really must find some way. Look what happened when we had this crisis in oil.
Can that kingdom survive?
Oh, yes, it can.
I mean, in this whole turmoil and chaos and revolution?
Yeah.
They're worried about it, and the way they survive is they export all the radicalism, and they need to be called on that because
and
they're
Yemen is
actually
make them do that
behind
more.
a lot of the Islamic extremism that we see in many places.
The administration secretly met with the Iranians as a prelude to launching the negotiations now underway on Iran's nuclear program without informing the Saudis. You know about that?
Yeah.
The Saudis also bristled over the administration's treatment of Egyptian President and longtime U.S. ally Hosni Mubarak during the Arab Spring. You know about that?
Yes.
What do you think of the Saudis' behavior?
Well, I mean, what the Saudis obviously are losing confidence in this administration, as you say, the way they handled Mubarak, the other issues that you referred to. So they are trying to figure out how can we protect ourselves.
Well.
So they're going to get involved on certain levels.
I'll tell you.
Moving toward some sort of détente or engagement with Iran, which terrifies the Israelis and the Saudis
And the Lebanese,
and the
Sunnis.
Sunni and the
Jordanian.
Issue 3, Alexis the Greek.
The people of Greece decided they no longer want an agenda of austerity and destruction. That is Greece's new prime minister, Alexis Tsipras. Last Sunday, the 40-year-old Mr. Tsipras won a stunning victory in Greece's parliamentary elections. His far-left Syriza party took 149 seats, and along with his junior coalition partner, now holds a governing majority. Syriza supporters are elated and have responded with revolutionary zeal.
These were the most crucial elections in the history of modern Greece. As young people, we opened up the road. Greece will change, Europe will change. A prosperous future starts tomorrow.
Greece's new government has big plans. It is deeply opposed to German Chancellor Angela Merkel's quote-unquote austerity package of spending cuts and Social Security reform. And it intends to renegotiate Greece's massive debt obligations. The new Greek government will also increase government spending, believing that more government is the answer to Greece's sputtering economic malaise. And they're not alone. Across Europe, from Britain to Spain, other far-left groups are also taking notice. They believe this is a moment of systemic change away from capitalism. Of course, others disagree. Notably, Chancellor Merkel has hinted she's willing to accept a Greek exit from the EU.
Question, is the European Union's unity about to be put to the test by Greece? Mort Zuckerman.
Yes, it certainly is. I mean, if they're going to try and oppose Angela Merkel, who is the dominant figure in the European Union, it's just not going to go anywhere. If they want to withdraw, they can withdraw. They may not be the only country that withdraws, but Angela Merkel is not going to risk German prosperity and German solvency and the German willingness to do whatever it takes to prevent inflation.
That will all be at risk if they pull out of the euro, because the other pig countries, Italy, Spain, Portugal, might do the same, and that's the end of the Eurozone. So I think Angela Merkel's austerity policies do not work. No. Europe is not recovering.
The UK is growing the fastest out of
and basically, the Greek people have been punished, and the banks have been rewarded because that's the bailout, basically interest on the debt. The debt has to be negotiated down, and I think it will be down because Merkel does not want to lose the Eurozone.
Rogan.
Yeah, no, I don't know what planet that, honestly, the Greek voters are on. The issues here, did the economic recession, because of the problems in the banking system, the capitalist system, unveil issues? Yes, but it unveiled them. The problem across the countries in Europe, whether it be Spain or Portugal or Greece, Italy, is that they have these welfare states that fundamentally do not work. They spend all this money, they don't have tax regimes, it is their responsibility, and now they're trying to blame the economic powerhouse German taxpayers to say, essentially, massively overspent and haven't taken responsibility.
Yeah,
But
let
you
Pat
deal
in.
with it.
All that may be true, but all of it is irrelevant in my judgment. Look, I think what Eleanor said is correct. Look, the Greeks have said we have had it, and we are not going with austerity, and we're going to start to spend, and if Angela Merkel's going to come down on us with both feet, we're departing. And the Greeks, I think, have backing in. I think they got it in Spain. I think they got it in England. Not in England, but they got it in France and Italy. In France and Italy, John. And I'll tell you, if the Germans don't accommodate the Greeks to some degree, this guy has to walk out of the Eurozone. And I think Angela Merkel ought to worry about whether that pulls the string on the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to walk. The drachma is a kind of a worthless currency. But the flaw in the Eurozone is that if a country can't control its currency, you're really at the mercy of the central bankers. And so I think you know, there's now a showdown that's happening, and the Greek people are in the streets, and they have really suffered. It's not like they're buying second homes.
The Greeks don't belong in a currency zone with Germans and Finns. The Greeks don't belong there, the Italians don't belong there, the Spanish don't belong there. And that is not an ethnic slur.
Yes. What are you going to say?
Listen, I mean, what you have is a number of countries in Europe, part of the common market, okay, there, who are simply they're not broke, but they're running at huge deficits, and the only country that saves them is Germany. And Germany's saying, hey, we're not going to pay everybody's debts, okay? Right. And at some point, they say, you want to leave? Leave. You don't want to, but we're not going to pay the debts. That's a natural, an instinctive response to the German. Angela Merkel is the most solid financial player in Europe and has been for decades.
Yeah, but her austerity politics do not work.
But the UK
and,
is leading.
and the banks could use a haircut instead of making the people suffer all the time.
Fourth position. Greece will be out of the Eurozone by year end. Yes or no?
You got it.
No.
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 Yes. Bye-bye.